Rome's worst enemy was Carthage. The two fought 3 wars with each other for dominance of the Mediterranean. But in one battle, Rome almost lost to Hannibal Barca, the greatest general of Carthage. Yet after the war, Rome invited him to the city as a guest. Why did they invite their greatest enemy to the heart of their empire? Let's find out. It all started with the Second Punic War. After defeating the Gauls and expanding into the Italian peninsula, Rome came into conflict with Carthage over control of the Mediterranean. Both sides fought over who would control key strategic locations like Sicily and Spain. This rivalry became so bad that they went to war not once, but 3 times. They were known as the Punic Wars, and although Rome won all 3 of them, the second was the most brutal. Carthage had the best general of his time, Hannibal Barca. He led an army that used elephants, cavalry, and infantry in innovative ways. In 218 BC, he even shocked the Romans by leading his army over the Alps straight into Italy. Now, before this happened, everyone thought it was impossible for elephants to survive such a journey, let alone lead an army. Rome had never seen anything like it. Hannibal's war plan was simple: destroy the Roman allies, and then attack Rome itself. He achieved some great victories against the Romans and had them on the run. It seemed that he might actually do it. If Rome fell, it would collapse the entire Mediterranean trading system and usher in a new era of trade with Carthage at the center of it. However, Rome refused to give up. They kept sending generals to stop Hannibal. One by one, they were defeated until eventually Rome sent a former consul named Scipio Africanus to defeat Hannibal. Scipio pursued Hannibal's army from northern Italy all the way down to the coast of Spain. Finally, at the Battle of Zama, Scipio destroyed Hannibal's army and ended the Second Punic War. As you can imagine, this victory made Scipio a hero in Rome. Statues and paintings of him were put all over the city. He was given a massive celebration with a triumph where he rode into the city on a golden chariot pulled by elephants, just like his enemy, Hannibal. So what happened next? Well, after the war, Rome decided what to do with their greatest enemy. Normally, the conquered people would be enslaved or left to die of starvation. That's what most conquerors did. But Rome was different. They invited Hannibal to come to Rome as a guest. This invitation wasn't just polite, it was a direct order from the Senate. You could refuse, but if you did, Rome would have a reason to start another war with Carthage. So basically, Hannibal had no choice but to accept. He arrived in Rome in 203 BC to meet with Scipio and the Senate. There's some debate about why Rome did this. Most historians agree it was to humiliate Hannibal and show him how generous Rome was. This would make Rome look merciful and strengthen their claim as the dominant power in the Mediterranean. There are also claims that Rome invited Hannibal because they wanted to learn more about his military strategies. We know that Rome kept prisoners who had valuable skills, like engineers and shipbuilders. Maybe they did the same with Hannibal. Whatever the real reason was, we know that Hannibal accepted the invitation. When he arrived in Rome, the Romans threw him a huge party. The streets were decorated, and there was a parade with elephants, chariots, and horses. All the important people in Rome were there. Hannibal was the star of the show. He was paraded around the city on a golden chariot, just like Scipio. But it was a cruel joke. Hannibal hated Rome for destroying his country. Rome knew this, which is why they invited him to their most important festival, the Roman triumph. Every time a Roman general won a war, they would hold a triumph in their honor. The general would ride through the city on a golden chariot while people sang and played music. The defeated enemies would be paraded through the streets behind the general. Sometimes they would be forced to carry the general's chariot. Imagine how Hannibal felt when he was paraded through the streets of Rome. He had been one of the most successful generals in history, but now he was nothing more than a trophy. To add insult to injury, he was forced to wear shackles during the parade. It was clear that Rome didn't trust him. Despite the humiliation, Hannibal still held his head high. He was a proud Carthaginian and wouldn't let Rome break him. But there was one thing that made him lose his cool. During the parade, the Romans showed captured elephants that Hannibal had used in battle. These elephants weren't just any animals. They were his companions. He had trained them since they were young and they were loyal to him. The sight of them being paraded through the streets was too much for him to bear. According to Plutarch, Hannibal burst into tears at the sight of his captured elephants. After the parade, Hannibal went to meet with the Roman Senate. He probably expected them to gloat about their victory, but instead they acted with dignity. They praised Hannibal for his skill as a general and admitted that he had almost defeated them. But why would Rome want to humiliate their greatest enemy and risk starting another war? What did they get out of it? Honestly, we don't know for sure, but we can guess. First, Rome wanted to show off their power. By inviting Hannibal, they showed the rest of the Mediterranean that they were strong enough to defeat him and control Carthage. This made other countries respect Rome and maybe even submit to their rule. Second, Rome could have invited Hannibal because they wanted to learn from him. We know that Rome kept prisoners who had valuable skills, like engineers and shipbuilders. Maybe they did the same with Hannibal. Finally, Rome may have invited Hannibal to spy on him. Hannibal was a brilliant general, but he was also proud and stubborn. Rome knew this, which is why they paraded him through the streets in shackles. They wanted to break his spirit and force him to betray Carthage. In fact, Rome offered Hannibal a deal. If he agreed to help them conquer Carthage, they would make him a Roman citizen and give him back his fortune. Hannibal refused and spent the rest of his life in Rome as a prisoner. He died in 183 BC, either by his own hand or by the Romans. Either way, it was a sad end for one of the greatest generals in history. If you think about it, Hannibal had a pretty rough life. He was born into a world that was hostile to Carthage and spent his whole life trying to improve his country's position. Unfortunately, he lived in a time when the Mediterranean was dominated by bigger and stronger empires. Even though he was successful on the battlefield, he couldn't win the war because his country was weaker than Rome. In the end, Hannibal became a legend, but only in Rome. To the Romans, he was the greatest general they ever faced. To the Carthaginians, he was a hero who almost beat Rome. But in reality, Hannibal Barca was simply a victim of his time. His story is a reminder that no matter how talented or skilled you are, it doesn't matter if your country isn't strong enough to back you up. Now I'll ask you, why do you think Rome invited Hannibal to their city? Share your opinion in the comments below. Also, check out our other videos about ancient Rome, and remember to subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching.